Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. President Muhammadu Buhari finally bid goodbye to the Federal Executive Council members on Wednesday. It was all done under a convivial atmosphere, and the president was effusive in his praise of the departing ministers for what he called their sense of patriotism and responsibility. Arise News State House correspondent Ehusa Inwumbo was in the council chambers. Let's take his report and then return for analysis.
It's 7 days to go, and the official countdown to the end of President Muhammadu Buhari's first-term administration begins. Members of the cabinet arrive for what appears to be their last meeting together. The meeting is an emotional one, clouded with obvious uncertainties on their faces. When a new cabinet is formed, not many may return. The Buhari administration came into office with three cardinal objectives: to fight corruption, stem insurgency, and grow the economy. And after 4 years of service, it's time for stock-taking.
The time of this administration was inaugurated in May 2015. About 1/3 of the entire local government areas of the Northeast were under the occupation of the insurgent Boko Haram, with bombing across the country. Similarly, under the direction and leadership as Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, the Ministry of Defense has recorded several achievements. Some of these include the review of national defense policy, increased operational capability of the armed forces, conduct of internal security operations, and the grading and dismantling of capacity of the Boko Haram.
Immediately we came, some few months we went into recession. It wasn't easy. But you took the bull by the horn as a courageous leader. Certain policies that other leaders will have chickened out to effect, like the single treasury account, you put it in place. Like appropriate pricing for petroleum products, which meant that the price of petrol went up. You did it. We
have worked together to deal with very many problems that beset that industry before we resumed. Problems of fuel scarcity, problems of dwindling production, problems of transparency, problems of crisis in the Niger Delta, problems of fiscal federalism and ensuring that the TSA ultimately captured most of the earnings of this country from that sector.
From the 36-member cabinet that was sworn into office in November 2015, 6 of them have since left the council. However, it's the first time that a cabinet would run its full course without major changes, amidst calls for a cabinet reshuffle.
Although we all had a common vision, we frequently had heated debates in this room on the best way to achieve our goals. These differing views are what made the decisions we took all the more rational. It is this quality that made me retain my cabinet for the full term. Each of you in this room has a unique skill and strength. We are a reflection of the Nigeria we aspire to achieve.
I must also greatly appreciate all of our cabinet colleagues. This has been an exceptionally patriotic and talented team. Everyone brought experience, knowledge, wisdom, and selflessness to council deliberations at all times.
President Buhari pays tribute to the team for the roles played in achieving the administration's objectives.
You should be proud to have contributed to our food security and economic diversification agenda, which led to the revival of our rural agrarian economy. You should be proud to have been part of the team that developed the economic recovery and growth plan, which led Nigeria exiting its worst recession in decades. You should be proud to have introduced the social investment program that enhance livelihoods of millions of Nigerians.
While the ministers have 6 more days before they hand over, it remains to be seen how many of them will make it back into the cabinet for another 4 years. Egusa Higumbo, Arise News.
For a more detailed perspective on the president's valedictory speech to his ministers, we are now being joined by Dr. Abiodun Adeniyi, a political scientist and lecturer at Baze University, Abuja. Abiodun Adeniyi, welcome to the program. Hello, good morning.
Good morning, the phenomenal doc. Good morning, the doc.
How are you?
My pleasure to be here again.
Good morning, good to see you.
Fine.
Well, I mean, you must have been following
Thank you. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
The latest developments in the country.
Yeah.
The president yesterday had a valedictory session with members of the Executive Council of the Federation, and it was full of praise for them. What's your take? Do you think that that cabinet has done as well as President Buhari tried to make out?
Well, first of all, we, at a new dawn, we have the opportunity to restart a process. You know, we have wobbled up to this stage from 2015 up to now, and it's okay to say that it's a time for us to reflect and to reflex. And that's what I think the president is doing. And as a leader, the onus is on him to always galvanize and inspire his lieutenants. To that extent, we may not fault him. But in terms of performance, in terms of delivery, in terms of productivity and efficiency, there are so many questions to ask around the departing ministers, if that is going to be the case, really. And of course, there are so many expectations, there are so many things we expect him to do from now on, other than saluting this present set of ministers, you know. Of course, we have prayed and we are concerned about it that we're not going to have to wait for 6 months again to have ministers named. We need, even by now, we should have expected that the president should have come up with a list. It's just a few days to the commencement of his second term in office. There's nothing is wrong if he comes out with a name at this time. And if it's going to be after the inauguration, it shouldn't be too long, maybe 1 week or so, or even less, you know, so that we can set the ball rolling as quickly as possible and it can hit the proverbial ground running. There's no time to waste. We know what it cost us the last time when we waited for 6 months. There was so much lethargy in the system, and it probably contributed to the economic recession that we witnessed at that time. This country is populated with a lot of human resources. We have quite a number of expertise. We have people that he can cash in on, people he can bring over, he can invite over to his cabinet, and I don't think it should take eternity for him to search search for these people, especially from his vantage position as the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
I want you to cast your mind back to November 2015 and try and recall your reaction to the cabinet after it was unveiled, well, finally unveiled after 6 months. Obviously, after that long wait, only a dream team would suffice for Nigerians. But how did you feel about each one of those appointees, and which one of them has surpassed expectations or disappointed, as the case may be?
I'm sorry, Tudu. I am not going to I'm not sure I can give any one of them excellence or to say that they've been above average. We still have lots of problems in this country, and it's so very easy for you to even score 55%. I mean, it's so very easy for people to know if you have scored 55%. You know, but of course, we definitely know, it's easy to also identify the fact that many have been below 50%, you know, because it's not rocket science, really. Because of our President Doldrum, if we see any ray of hope from any circle, then you can say, okay, this one has done exceptionally well. You know, I can't see any one of them scoring 55% by my own rating, but 50%, okay, you can give it to some of them, which is, you can say is pass, but it's not commendable, you know. So the point we need to be making now is that the president has another opportunity for another restart. So it's another opportunity for him to right the many wrongs evident in the last 3.5 or 4 years. You know, Nigerians, in accordance with INEC declarations, have voted him, you know, and it happens in life, you know. He's been a lucky person, you know. He's austere, he's Spartan, he has what the so-called or proverbial integrity, as it were, you know. But again, it's not enough for Mr. President to be the only pious, the only righteous man in a collective. He is a leader. He is a springboard around which morality and integrity in government revolves. You know, and it's not enough for us to see him alone, to continue to single him alone as a man of integrity. What about others? You know, what has he done in the last 3.5 or 4 years to ensure that other members of the cabinet follow suit? You know, I think the next 4 years is another opportunity for the president to be concerned about reining in on his lieutenants, you know, to ape and idolize him, you know, to follow his footsteps, you know, so that he alone will not just be seen as the only one that is concerned about leadership, that is concerned about inspiration, about transparency, and about openness, but that others too are also following suit, so that we can see that, yes, we have not just returned to democracy, but we are making progress at that level. You know, we have had a turbulent history in this nation, in this part of the world, really. We've moved from slavery, if you want us to go to that extent. We've moved from colonialism, and we have eased off the military. Now we are dealing with a parasitic elites, you know, and it's a shame if our leaders, you know, as they are presently constituted, and the president and the ministers are not able to show good example through productivity and efficiency.
Who are the ministers that you would give that 50% pass mark to?
Oh yeah, it's thanks for wanting me to be specific. It's a difficult one, really, but I think at the level of ideation, at the level of intellection, at the level of understanding his role, I will give it to Governor Raji Fashola, Minister of Power, Works and Housing. That's a very, you know, it's a very complex ministry to combine. You know, it was in the president's vision to so combine them in the bid to reduce number of ministries that we have, so that we can cut costs. And of course, the man has been there. You know, he has showed a very good understanding of what his role is, even though he's not a technical person in the light of being an engineer or a lawyer army or an engineer or a road, whatever you want to call it. But of course, we have seen understanding, and we have seen inspiration. Yes, we may say again that we are still far behind at the level of power supply, but we know that the problem is much more than what one individual can technically deal with in 3.5 years. You know, the problem is systemic, is deep-seated. It's something that began ages ago. We remember at the time of President Olusegun Obasanjo, his first minister of blessed memory now, Bola Ige, he said that the power problem will be over in 6 months. And after 6 months, we still have, of course, many years after, we're still having a problem with power. You know, it's a systemic thing, and when we see individuals who walk through these paths, through this mindful, through this graveyard of reputation, and are still able to keep their heads high, I think it's okay to give them some level of encouragement, even though we are saying that they could still have done better than they have done. Yeah.
Well, Dr. Adeniyi, it's a telling comment that, you know, you can only single out one minister out of so many. You know, I thought maybe you were still going to go on and mention some other ministers. But your reaching is very clear. But it's different from the president's reaching. The president says each member of his cabinet has a unique talent, a unique skill. Does that give you the impression that we may be faced with a situation whereby he will just reappoint all these ministers all over again and give them a second term, you know, on the basis of the fact that they've been loyal and they have unique skills and strengths? That's one. And then, you know, do you support the view that when these nominees, when the names of nominees are sent to the National Assembly, that the portfolios should be attached so that we can have a proper appraisal on the floor of the Senate about who and who will become members of the next cabinet?
Very, very well, Doc. You know, but we do not expect the president to do less, as the president as the one who's supposed to inspire them, who's supposed to galvanize and encourage them. And of course, if he's not going to retain many of them, he needs to encourage them on for their future endeavors. And I think that's what the president just did. You know, it was a public relations strategy, a kind of diplomatese, just to massage their ego, so to say. But if you look at it critically, you know that the performance of the ministers is actually is less than salutary. What they've just come to do largely is to continue the routinous process of timekeeping. You know, marking time there, helping to himself to a very large extent, and just walking that path without being concerned about any kind of legacy. And that's why on so many occasions we have had so many allegations against them, you know, so many allegations that flew in the press against many of them. You know, and it's also regrettable that the president didn't do so much about those ones identified, rightly or wrongly. We're not saying that it should be rash. We're not saying that it should be unreasonably decisive in sacking them, but at least there should have been some semblance of investigation, some checks and double checks, just to make sure that, you know, the populace does not feel that anything goes in this country. So they will feel that he's concerned about sanity. He's concerned about transparency and openness. And he's concerned about people doing things in the anecdotal right way. You know, but for us to have allegations flying against ministers and the president keeping quiet, it's not really very good. Yes, we hear defenses about him querying them or asking questions here and there, but these things are not thorough enough. We just have this very strong feeling that they are mere attempt to paper the crack without really dealing with it squarely. You know, and so I disagree with him, with every due respect, that they've all been doing well. Yes, many of them are accomplished citizens. Many of them are men with the Shakespearean elements fully mixed in them. But it's not enough for you to come with impressive credentials and not be able to deploy it towards the improvement of the service you're supposed to render in your sector. You know, many of them failed in this regard, I'm afraid to say this, Dr. Bati. And to your second question, which is whether or not it's going to keep them or something, it's going to be very difficult to make projections on that at the moment, but if you see the president, the kind of president we have, is that kind of person that is, yes, we have said very oftentimes that he's full of principles, he abhors luxuriation, but again, he's that kind of person that seems to be scared to deal with people, as in to sanction people. You know, he is that kind of person that is always interested in cutting people, keeping them irrespective of whether they are wrong in what they've been asked to do. So it is possible that I would not be surprised if I see half of these ministers coming back, really. I wouldn't be surprised, but that's not the way to go. The way to go really is to be concerned about, you know, technocrats, is to be concerned about people who can deliver the goods, you know, people who after some 1 year, we're seeing performance. We're seeing performances, we are seeing actions, we are seeing results. You know, there should be key performance index around these people, and if they are not delivering, they should be asked to go. The ministerial position is not a traditional stool. It's not a traditional stool. It's not a position you are just there. It's not a monarchy. It's not a position you are there to hold for life. You know, if you're not performing, excuse me, you should be asked out. And I also subscribe to that point of view that, you know, there's nothing wrong in the president, you know, signposting the positions, the portfolios that will be given to the ministers. You know, if you're going to go to power, it's okay for the president to grill you. I mean, so that we can mark you against some of the things, some of the pronouncements you're going to make on the floor of the Senate. And the Senate can also critically evaluate your competence to see whether or not you can deliver the goods in the sector you are being sent to. And the students should also be empowered. I mean, if portfolios are attacked, and if they see that one person is going to be better in this area, in that area, than in the other area, the students should be empowered to make those changes or make those recommendations to the president. And that's how governance is, and that's how we see it happen in more advanced civilized democracies. There's nothing wrong with us copying that kind of system. It just adds to the much talked about efficiency and productivity in governance. Doctor?
You just used the word scared. with regards to the president being scared to tackle those who need to be tackled. That's your opinion, but it's generally perceived that the president is averse to change, whatever his reasons or motives might be, which is why it's important to look back on the work of this cabinet, because there's every indication that many of them will be returning, like you just said. And then you've also just talked about the part of the process that involves the Senate. What about the parts before that? Can we discuss the process through which nominees are actually suggested to the president for ministerial positions in the first case? What can be done to strengthen that, to put square pegs in square holes, round pegs in round holes, and just get a better outcome than we've been seeing?
Very well, Tudun. That's another problem, really. There's so much of politicization of the process, I think sometimes it's just done based on patronage, based on you being a member of the party, based on you being a president's kinsman, based on you being a friend of the president or a friend of somebody who is influential, who is powerful. It has actually dominated the process. And in fairness to the president, it is not the first person. He's not the first person to do it. It's been a tradition in the past, But the fact that it's been a tradition, the fact that he also came and continued it does not mean that it is not something that we should begin to look away from. We should discontinue this process and be concerned about expertise and delivery, And that's why we always find ministers who cannot perform. We always find not just ministers again, we also have heads of department ministries who are also very lethargic about the assignments they've been given because they were not there based on their ability, based on their capability, but they were put there in the first place based on political consideration, based on sentiment and emotion. And that's not how government is run. Even in organization, in the private sector, for instance, we cannot imagine a multi-billion-dollar organization in this country making somebody a CEO just because the person is from this tribe or this ethnic group or this religion or the other. It's never done. And that's why you see greater efficiency, largely so, in the private sector than we have in governance. So if we have seen this kind of thing working in the private sector, in other sectors of society, then why don't we just transport it to the public sector, where we do less of politics, less of sentiments and emotion, less of consideration for classifiers, for social classifiers, and be concerned about expertise, about ability and capability. That's actually the deal, really, and I think that's the route that the president should be advised to take this time around. The 4 years is gone. He just has another 4 years to make his mark. And, of course, time is not waiting for anyone. So he has a legacy to leave, and he shouldn't fail in this regard. Tudun.
Well, let's explore this a little further. I mean, you've talked about ability, capability, competence, and your preferences for technocrats. But you recall that the ruling All Progressives Congress, the APC, recently said, look, one major consideration will be loyalty, particularly to the party in constituting a new cabinet for Nigeria. Should the president listen to the party and just focus strictly on loyalty within the APC, or he should look further afield? What will you recommend in terms of the character of the incoming federal cabinet, and also in terms of the complaints that, there has been a greater emphasis on recruitment from a particular part of the country and discrimination against the Southeast?
Yeah, very well, Doc. I think from the kind of president that we have, I don't think he's that kind of person that will pander to the pressure tactics of any political party or any interest group for that matter. He may just give them that respect, that open respect, but he'll just go ahead and do whatever he wants to do. We saw this happen in 2015, where even some powerful cast felt sidelined in the choice of ministers, and I see him still going that route, but in following that route, he should be mindful of the plurality of this country. He should know that this country is a differentiated and disparate one. This country is not particularly homogeneous, and he should be sensitive to the concerns and feelings of every section. there's no part of this country that you can undermine at the level of expertise, at the level of competence. They've got abilities and capabilities. And of course, there's no level of professional that you'll not find in every state of this country if you search properly. It's just okay in the spirit of federalism, in the spirit of nationalism and spread, and in the spirit of giving everyone a sense of longing and belonging, to be integrative, to be inclusive. That's what democracy is about. Democracy is about participation and inclusion. People feeling free, people feeling happy under their system of governance, and feeling that, okay, they belong. They have a strong sense of nationness, The president should be much more sensitive to these, I'm afraid. And if there's a way we can, tell him these, it is important we'll continue to tell him, because we don't have any other country but this country, and we're all concerned about its growth and development, and you don't want to feel depressed living in a nation called Nigeria.
Can we look at some of the claims that the president made in his speech, starting off with Boko Haram? It appears that he was more measured in his words. He did not declare an outright victory. He just said that his government had been successful in liberating some local governments that were under Boko Haram captivity. Yeah. How would you assess the accomplishments of this government and the Ministry for Defense with regards to Boko Haram and also piracy, militancy, banditry, and other ills?
Yeah, thanks, Sudu. But before I go to your question, I remember Doctor asked, there's a second part to Doctor's question, the kind of cabinet I want to see. More specifically, I want to see a cabinet that has less politicians and more of technocrats, more of experts, people who are vast, who are exposed in specific areas of governance, not just people who are going to be rewarded on the basis of sentiments and emotion. We need to see a very plural, and competent. I don't know. I just like that word, really. People who are competent, who are vast, who are learned and educated, real education and exposed and experienced in specific areas of governance. Manning those positions. It's very important that the president look at this area. And pay less attention to politics, because politicians will not deliver. All they want to do, largely, with due respect to many of them, is just to come and continue some level of patronage, some the reward distributive, unfortunately distributive system, which has no basis really in accounting for productivity and efficiency. That's not the route we should follow this time around. I'm going to say this for the umpteenth time. And with respect to what the president said concerning Boko Haram, we understand again that he's a leader. He's going to give us hope. He's going to give us that feeling that something is being done. No doubt some mileage have been achieved, but of course we know that how many of us can go to Maiduguri and go outside Maiduguri. Even sometimes some people, if you ask them to travel to Maiduguri, they'll be very scared of Maiduguri. But I do know that Maiduguri is largely safe. But can you dare go beyond Maiduguri metropolis? I mean, you'll be just be endangering your life because anything can happen. Why do we have division in Borno State between the green, the red, and the yellow zone? Just to let you know how dangerous some areas are. They'll tell you that this red zone, you are not sure. This yellow zone, okay, here and there. But the green zone, which Maiduguri likely is relatively safe. You don't want to have a country where you still have those kind of subtle classification just because you are concerned about your safety. We do know that very great efforts have been made to deal with Boko Haram, but of course the Boko Haram is still there. We cannot deny it. We should go beyond the physical and concentrate on the psychological. We should go beyond the hard power and concentrate on the soft power. We know what the problem of Boko Haram is. We know what caused it. We know it's a byproduct of long years of deprivation and deprivation, long years of poverty, long years of abandoning the youths, the Alumajere who have now grown up, they have matured and become something else. We know that's what the problem is. We know we should begin to address this thing. Yes, it's a long-term factor, but we need to pay attention to addressing it. Do we have to be concerned about childbearing, the number of children we want to be bearing? Do you want to have 15 wives and 70 children where you cannot afford to feed yourself? And you want to believe that somebody somewhere will provide for them. At the end of the day, they are on the street. And when When they feel hopeless, when they feel helpless, they just take to arms. This is all over the country. It's not peculiar to any one particular place. But the problem, the issue is that government should be much more responsive to these problems. That's why we're having all this banditry, all these armed robbery, kidnapping all over the place. You and I are no longer feeling safe. Everybody's a potential victim. And in that light, you also say that government has failed. And there are no questions about it. And President Buhari, really, like we say again, is lucky. He has a second term to turn things around. He has another opportunity to right the wrongs in the last 4 or 3.5 years, and the ball is back in his court. He needs to deliver to them.
Yeah, Dr. Adeniyi, let's farm out the discussion a little bit. I think, we've spent some time on the cabinet. Now, you just talked about Boko Haram. Now, around that subject, there's been some controversy over what President Obasanjo said. That, look, this has gone beyond unemployment, restive youths, that this is now about an attempt to Islamize, the rest of Africa and Fulanize Nigeria. And there is divided opinion on whether or not President Obasanjo should have said that. You have people like Professor Sage, Prince Tony Momo, Abubakar Sav, Alhaji Sule Lamido, and a host of others who are against him for that. And then you have those who support him. Professor Wole Soyinka, most surprisingly, Femi Fanika, the Yinka Odumakin, Afenifere Pandev, and Ohaneze Ndigbo on the other side supporting President Obasanjo. But what's your own take on this controversy about whether indeed the long-term objective of Boko Haram is to Islamize West Africa and Fulanize Nigeria?
Well, it's a complicated thing, but very, very interesting as well, because these personalities you have mentioned are legends, in many regards. They are people that you cannot toy with. Their views are like, I don't know, their views are almost godly, but it doesn't mean that they're infallible. It doesn't mean that they cannot be imperfect, that they cannot falter sometimes. President Obasanjo particularly is a respected figure. He has written his name in gold in the evolution of this of the history of this country, and even Africa, and even some sections of the world. So you cannot take his pronouncements lightly. Sometimes you want to believe that they must have some inside information before they come to the open to speak. But again, you cannot also take it away from Obasanjo that he may just be extending a little bit the crisis of confidence that exists between him and the president. I doubt really if the Fulani people will have come somewhere and say, okay, if they sat at a meeting and say, let's Fulanize Nigeria or West Africa, or maybe some Muslim people will have sat somewhere and say, okay, let's Islamize Nigeria or West Africa. I doubt if this has been the case. I think we're just having a case of some perverted bigots, sitting somewhere who are indoctrinated, who lack basic sense of understanding about what life, what plurality, what differentiation means, thinking that they can ride over the others at the level of ideology. They are just doctrinaire in their activities, and when somebody is doctrinaire, when somebody is indoctrinated, they act like mad people. They are like beasts, so to say. They cannot think. So they can't mount anything. So what those people are saying really should not be essentialized. It shouldn't really be generalized to say that that's what the entire group of people actually want. I think I want to disagree slightly what our respected elders are saying in that regard, that somebody wants to Islamize, somebody wants to Fulanize. I doubt it. It is actually something that is impossible, but it's also okay to give them this slack, that they're probably calling attention to something that has appeared intractable, despite existing possibilities that we should have dealt with it in the past. So on both sides, you will say that there are issues for concern, but I will not go for the extreme in any case. The elders they have made their point. The onus is on the government to be much more responsive, because they have the levers of power. The throttle is under their feet, and they can do much more than they have done. Again, we're going to say it, the President Buhari regime is lucky to have another 4 years to right this wrong. Boko Haram is just, they are not spirits, they are human beings. Boko Haram is not from heaven, they couldn't even have been. You know, so they will also live in the same world, in this part of the world with them. We have a Nigerian military, you know, the almighty Nigerian military for that matter, that is well-trained, that is well-armed, that is largely well-funded, being funded by the state. There's no way anybody can tell me that Boko Haram is better funded than the Nigerian army, you know, so there's no reason. Yes, sometimes there's no reason why they shouldn't have been dealt with. Sometimes they say that it's an asymmetrical war. Asymmetrical war, many of our military officers are well-trained people. They've gone to some of the best universities in the world and they have some of the best degrees. You know, they cannot also tell me that they didn't do modules in fighting a symmetrical war, you know. So there must be a deep-seated problem somewhere that we are not dealing with. Could it be corruption? Could it be ethnicity? Could it be complicity? What is it that is preventing us from dealing with these people who are making us lose sleep?
So many questions to answer. Now, I want you to avert your mind to the economy. The president said that the Economic Recovery and Growth Plan aided Nigeria's exit out of recession. Now, we don't know who will form the cabinet, but we do know that that plan will be in operation until 2020. What is your assessment of the plan and its execution and any benefits that have accrued from it?
Economic Recovery and Growth Plan is just a body of ideas, you know, put together by the administration, maybe through the instrumentality of one of these Bretton Woods institutions, you know, of these foreign experts, you know, and it's supposed to be a springboard around which their development, economic development exports will revolve. But of course, we know it's okay if you want to have a roadmap, if you want to have a work plan. I see it more as a work plan, but at the level of implementation, I have my doubts, really. Yes, we have seen attempts, we have seen explanation, especially from the vice president and some other officials in government that so much money has been committed to infrastructure, because if there's massive infrastructure, of course, the economy will be stimulated. Perhaps this is gradually coming into being, but I'm afraid it is too slow in coming, because apart from Abuja, which is, the roads in Abuja are really expanding. You know, the network of roads in Abuja have been expanded on a very basis. You see construction everywhere. I'm not sure such is being witnessed in many other parts of the country. It may be happening, but I'm saying that I'm not too sure. Yes, we have reports about attempts to do some of these things in the southeast as well, but are they really effective? Are they really working yet? Yes, we also have, we've had the stories of Lagos-Ibadan Expressway. You know, yeah, but we are waiting for its completion. Efforts are different from actual delivery. You know, more efforts should be made to match the gap between attempt and delivery. You know, until we begin to see that, then we'll can start commending the Economic Recovery and Growth Plan. You know, but let's not forget that what the president did essentially yesterday was just to live up to his bidding, up to his expectation as a leader. I mean, to make some fine pronouncements, to engage in diplomatics, you know, and to, of course, to use nice words to encourage his ministers, and through that, you know, encouraging the population. It's okay to do that, you know, but it's better still to be concerned about effectuation of those promises.
Well, Dr. Adeniyi, let me ask you a question about another topical issue that is in the front page of the newspapers today.
Yes, sir.
And this has to do with Justice Zainab Bukachua, you know, standing down as chairperson of the Presidential Election Tribunal, citing personal reasons. After that panel had ruled that, you know, the application by Atiku's counsel lacks merit. What's your take? Do you think that this is a good thing for the judiciary, or what the steps she has taken, is it, in your view, in order?
Yeah, Doc, I think it's actually, it was a very good development, and I salute Justice Bukachua for doing that, for summoning the courage to excuse herself, because even if she was not going to influence proceedings, you know, you see, there will still be this feeling that something could still happen at the back door, you know, and like you lawyers will say, justice must not just be done, but it must be seen to be done in a transparent and open process, you know. So what she did was just to build greater confidence, to bring about greater confidence in the judiciary, particularly in the tribunal. And I think it's okay. We have quite many hands who can take her place in that place. She deserves a lot of commendation, really, for her courage. And even if, to a very large extent, we could say that maybe the main opposition, was trying to over-dramatize or over-politicize the process by just trying to hold on to everything. They have a right to do that, just like they did in the case of the woman in INEC. You know, they have a right to do all these things. But the onus is also on the authority to try to assure everyone that is complaining that they do not have any skeleton in their cupboard. And through the judiciary, through my Lord Justice Bukachua, it's been proven again that there's nothing to hide. You know, we are committed to a transparent and just process, and we're going to see justice delivered in the complaint of former Vice President Atiku Abubakar at the tribunal. You know, so it's good for the judiciary, and it's good for the exercise, really. But again, we need to continue to appeal that what is more important is peace. You know, peace, I think, is much more important than who wins or who loses. And it comes back to the age-old debates on Nigerian political process, how we can, whether or not we shouldn't rethink our political structure, whether or not we shouldn't think of how to share power better than what it presently is. In a situation where we have somebody winning and taking all, and somebody losing and losing everything, you know, it makes the one who is losing to be very, very vociferous and to be die-hearted in pursuing everything that some of them may even rock the boat. That's what some of the things that we are seeing across the country, that's what we are seeing now. And it's going to continue until we'll have a meaningful conversation around the reordering or the restructuring or the rethinking of our political process, as it were. Doctor.
So let's look at the anti-corruption fight, since we've looked at security and the economy, and that relates to, well, if we're speaking of the cabinet, it relates to the Office of the Attorney General of the Federation. How would you rate his central role in the anti-corruption fight and also adherence to the rule of law?
Well, there's still a lot to be done in that area. We know the bane of this country. Corruption is the elephant in the room as far as the problem of this country is concerned, you know. It's endemic, it's systemic, and, you know, even the most corrupt often comes out and deceive us by speaking against corruption. So at the end of the day, you just see that we're living a lie all over the place. You know, you can't imagine the level of corruption going on in places. And that's why sometimes you pity the anti-corruption agencies, EFCC, ICPC, but they can't really do much more than they are doing, really. Because we fail to look at one area, which is preventive. The structures are very weak. All reform structures set up by previous administration and sometimes blessed by this administration as well, we have failed to adhere strictly to their prescriptions. You know, because these reforms will have plugged loopholes that lead to corruption. It's not enough for us to be focusing on the curative. The preventive aspect is also very, very important. You know, we've been talking about anti-corruption, Tundu, since the 1960s, from the period of the 10%. Major Cardinal Ezegu mentioned it in his first coup or so, you know, 10%, but now we're talking about 40, 50%. And I'm afraid if we continue this route, in another 20, 30 years, we'll still be talking about corruption. It's just going to be like a sing-song, like a bad recurring decimal, you know, and we're not going anywhere. We need to be concerned about the preventive aspect, about reforms that are meant to plug the holes, that are meant to block the structures, to develop structures that prevent corruption. What has happened to the public procurement reform? How well are we implementing it? Okay, we know what it's all about, really. We know the extent it could have gone in minimizing corruption. Are we still committed to the implementation of the reform? What about the public service reform? To what extent are we concerned about implementing the prescriptions of that agency? you know, we look away from some of these things, we'll create them. There will be so many ululations, so many celebration around their creation, but a few months or years down the line, we'll begin to look away from it, and we'll just continue in our way. And that's the point we keep making, that our leaders have to be much more serious about implementing our rules, our laws, our ethical values, some of the things that we subscribe to, because those are the things that will take us out of the problems that we are in. And having said that, the president has done well to an extent by insisting, by always talking about anti-corruption. At least it's okay that he's letting us know that this is a cankerworm that is sitting deep into our very fabric. This is something that is our bane, is a problem that we need to deal with. At the level of conscientization, at the level of awareness creation, he has done very well. But at the level of dealing with it, I'm afraid there's still much to be done, really. We have had stories of stolen billions, but it's also still mind-boggling that to know that there are still stories of much more billions stolen elsewhere. And of course, there are allegations flying over the place that we cannot completely exonerate the present government. The president, you may exonerate the president, but some of his lieutenants are not particularly clean. And there are so many evidence to prove this from what we see in the media. You know, what has been done to deal with these ones, you know. Again, you want to challenge, at least for whatever it is worth, the ICPC, the EFCC, to be up and doing, to keep up the fight. At least let's not all be that we are resting on our hours. Let it be that attempts are being made to deal with this cankerworm, even if we know that there's much more fundamental things that we need to be looking at, which is the preventive aspect. Yes.
Well, Dr. Adeniyi, thank you very much. Thank you very much indeed for your insights. You know, we've enjoyed having this conversation with you. Do you agree with me?
We absolutely
yes,
do. Thank you so
very much.
Doctor.
Enjoy the rest of your day.